And hello, welcome to Stream City Radio, streamcity.org, Stream City Sports on the YouTube side of things. As we been talking about this one for weeks, for different reasons it's gotten backed up. We'll start breaking down this big debate about the strongest conference in college football. What was it this past year? You've got a lot of people that will just default to, well, it must be the Big Ten. They've won 3 national championships in a row. That's far from that's the simple answer, not necessarily the correct answer. I think you need a few more data points than that, and I'm not sure that necessarily even speaks to the strength of the entire conference. To me, a couple things that don't matter in this conversation. One of them right off the bat is bowl games. Bowl games have become what they've always been, but to a much bigger degree. They are, they're basically done for fun and bragging rights. There's nothing, and it preps you for next year. Those are the things you get out of bowl games. Now, do you want to win them? Absolutely. You want to win every game you play. But to use that as any kind of data point for comparing conferences for the regular season is ridiculous. They're not the same teams. You've got kids in the transfer portal. You've got kids that have declared to go professional that are sitting the bowl games out. You've got coaching staffs that are leaving. They're not the same teams. So you really can't, there's really no good way to use that in any meaningful way to determine what the best conference is. That ended probably, I don't know, when did McCaffrey sit it out? That's kind of when it started to end. And it snowballed. I mean, back then it was, I think, 3 guys in the entire NCAA set out the bowl game, and at least one of those was injured. So, it's a very different animal now. So that's not a comparison point. I don't even think you can necessarily even use the playoffs as a comparison point for one very simple reason. The conferences are not equally represented in the playoffs. If we had a 16-team playoff where you had 4 teams from the ACC, 4 teams from the SEC, 4 teams from the Big Ten, 4 teams from the Big 12, that would be an excellent data point. It's not what we've got. And that still only speaks to the strength of the top portion of the conference. And when we're talking about the overall strength of the conference, that's top to bottom. Then, so what does matter? Well, what does matter is head-to-head competition outside of your conference against other power teams and group of 5 teams. When I was putting this together, I threw out the FCS schools. FCS schools would play a role in determining the strength of the group of 5 conferences. But when we're talking about Power 5 conferences, it is such a different mindset that coaches take around how they approach those games. You've got coaches that, they're up 35-0. They're sitting their entire team. They end up winning 35-3, and people think it was a close football game. You got other guys that are going to play their starters till the end and win 70-0. Doesn't tell me anything about the strength of your team or the strength of your conference. It just tells me that you don't understand how to build a team for the long term, which is improving the back end of your roster, which happens from playing in these games. Some coaches simply just don't do it. So that brings us to, how did I break all this down? Because you have to break it down, because wins and losses only tell a portion of the story. A win, a top 10 team playing the bottom team out of another conference, that's supposed to be a win, and that doesn't tell me anything. And only how bad you beat them tells me so much. So what I did was I came up with a point system for how many points you won by. I'll go through that. Everybody starts out on an even 12 points. That's where you start. And the reason I did that is I broke the group of 5 and the Power 5 down into 12 tiers of teams. And obviously, with the power teams, the power conferences, it's tiers 1 through 8. And then the group of 5 kicks in with the American Conference at Tier 6, which would have been Tulane as their champion, all the way down to Tier 11, I believe is where I went to with them. And then you have the, yeah, I believe that's right. And then the rest of them kick in one rung lower. So basically, that's how we got what we got. When we and I'll walk everybody through this. We're basically going to do the SEC today, and basically, I took the 3 points that everybody kind of says you get for being at home and factored that in. So home win's not worth what a neutral site win is worth, what an away win is worth. So if I win a ball game, for instance, 3-0 by 3, and I'm at home, I get nothing for that. I get no points for that, even if I was playing an equal team. Why? Well, because 3 points for being at home. Get 1 point for a neutral site, I get 2 points for away if I win those ball games. And I did that on a sliding scale all the way, and I broke it down: a 0 to 3 point win, a 4 to 7 point win, 8 to 10, 11 to 13, 14 to 16, 17 to 19, and just continued to add a point till we got to 15. At some point, I beat a team bad enough, it doesn't matter, whether I beat them 45-0 or 70-0. And, at some point, I'm only going to give you so many points for running the score up. So that's kind of where we're at. And I'll give you some examples how I did this. Georgia versus Marshall. Georgia comes in as a level 1 football team. Marshall comes in at a level 10. Okay. So Georgia, out of that sliding scale of 12, loses 9 points because that's how many levels are above them. So they start out at a 3. Now they can win points back. There's a 38-point victory for Georgia. So it's not a close ball game. They win 13 points back in this situation and end up with a point total of 16. Marshall ends up with a point total of 8. That's how I'm doing it. Next example, Georgia Tech. Georgia comes in a Tier 1 team. Tech comes in a Tier 3 team. It's a neutral site game. Georgia wins this ball game by 7. Okay. 7 points for a neutral site gets you 2 points. So it's basically a push for the conferences. Yes, Georgia won the football game, but you're talking about your top tier team playing a 3-tier out of another conference, so that's a push. Nobody, as far as comparing the conferences, we end up even on that. And Producer Blue decided he wanted to pipe in over here. Final example is Texas-Ohio State. Texas goes on the road, loses by 7. Once again, Ohio State's Tier 1, Texas is a Tier 3 football team. So that is a two-point gain for Texas, or a 2-point loss for Texas. But Texas starts out, I'm sorry, it's 1 point. I'll get this right in a minute, because you go off the home team. Ohio State is the home team. They won by 7. You get 1 point for that. So Ohio State gets 1 point added back. Texas loses a point. Texas got 2 points for being 2 tiers below Ohio State. So even though it's an Ohio State victory, when we're comparing conferences, it is a slight win for the SEC in that situation. Because this isn't talking about head-to-head and what happened in these ball games. This is talking about how teams performed against teams of different levels from different conferences. And that's the only way you can compare this. So basically, when you look at the SEC, Tier 1 is Georgia and Ole Miss. Tier 2 was Alabama, Texas A&M. Tier 3 is Texas, Oklahoma, so on and so forth, till you get all the way down to Tier 8, which is South Carolina and Arkansas for the SEC. So let's let's work our way through it and what what the SEC did in 2025 compared to other conferences. And like I said, we'll do this. We'll break down all the numbers at the end, but let's go through it team by team. Georgia comes in, and we've already talked about their Marshall victory, 16 points, 47-7 win, 1 versus 10 tier, and 13 points for the victory, so they end up with 16 total. Charlotte, a game where they kind of pulled everybody in the second half. It's going to happen, but not to the degree it happens against against FCS schools, so that's why we didn't count them. But they end up winning 35-3. Well, it was a 1 versus 10 also. So they win 9 points back, so that's a push. 12 points is where Georgia and Charlotte both end up, because that's kind of what you're supposed to beat a team by, that you're that much better than. 35-3 falls into that expected win zone, I guess would be a good way to put it. So you end up with nothing for that. It's a push. Same thing with the Georgia Tech game. We talked about it in the example. 16-9, your final, a 1 versus 3. Georgia's given up 2 points. They earn back 2 points for a neutral site win, end up at 12. It's a push. So Georgia ends up just slightly better than average with a 13.3 for the 3 games they played outside of conference. Looking at Ole Miss. Ole Miss starts out with an absolute blowout of Georgia State. Georgia State comes in. They're a Tier 12 football team, bottom of the Sun Belt. So you're giving up 11 points. You're starting at 1 if you're Ole Miss. Yeah, you win 15 points because you earn the maximum amount of points you could earn by defeating another team. But so you end up with 16. Because that's the best you could do playing a team that you're 11 tiers better than. Tulane, a little bit different story. Tulane comes in here. They're a Tier 5 team. They come in, lose by 35. So in that situation, Ole Miss earns 18 points for the win over Tulane. Washington State's where the problem comes in for Mississippi. Yeah, you won the ball game, but you're talking a Tier 1 versus Tier 8 football team. And I slotted the independent schools, which Washington State would have fallen under with only 2 teams in the Pac-12, by their record, basically. So they came in as a Tier 8. So it's a 3-point win at home, but when we're comparing conferences, that looks like a loss because you're much, much better than Washington State. So out of that 12 points that you started out at, you're giving away 8 of those, and you're earning back 3 points. You end up at a 5. So while it is a win, when we're comparing conferences, it's a pretty big black eye. It doesn't look good. So to me, that's kind of the way I approach this thing. So they end up with a 13. Yes, they ended up above where they of the average, but not much above it. So far when you look at it, and it is going to be harder for these top teams because of a situation like the Georgia State game where you can only win so many points in that ball game. No matter how much you win by, 16 is as high as you can go. So there's a little bit of a cap on this top end teams, and I suppose there'd probably be a way to round that out and make it more even, but it's going to be even for every conference, and that's all I was after here. I'm not necessarily trying to. You just had to have a way to weight it, and balance it, and so these top teams may not end up with as many points because they're kind of capped out where they can be, where the bottom end of the conference actually is in a situation to earn more points because they're lower tier and playing a team out of a group of 5 does not hurt them as bad as it does a top-tier team, nor should it. Okay, dipping into tier number 2, Texas A&M. And Texas A&M was, for the most part, unimpressive in non-conference games with the exception of Notre Dame game. They open up against UTSA. It's a 42-24 victory, but it's a tier 2 versus 8 situation, so you end up earning 7 points back. Not quite getting back to breaking even because you were giving up. I take that back. You were giving up 6. Actually, I did that wrong when I did my numbers here. That should be 13 points. 6, you went back 7? Yes. So 13 points. I added 11. So 13 points for UTSA. And then you play an exact same situation with Utah State where it's a 2 versus 10 tier. 44-22. Almost exact. A little bit bigger point spread, but not enough to get out of the same zone. You win back 7 points. So you end up with 11 in that situation after you gave up 8. Yeah. No, once again, got that wrong. You should have ended up at a 10 in that situation. Yeah. So at any rate, so 2 points back on UTSA, 2 points back on Utah State. Your total ends up the same. You end up just above break even with with Texas San Antonio, and below break even with Utah State. Notre Dame's where you made a little bit of hay. It is an impressive victory for A&M going on the road against Notre Dame. Yes, it's a 1-point victory, but you're on the road against an equal, because I rated Notre Dame as a tier 2 team. So you're even with them. So that 2 points puts you at 14 for the game, and that's a nice, to me, when you start getting to 2 or more, that's a good win, and you beat Notre Dame. So you come out dead even. Actually, you're going to come out just above even. By the time you add those in, you're going to be at 12.6. So just slightly above break even for Texas A&M. Alabama, another one. One of the worst losses that the conference absorbed all season long belonged to Alabama. Week 1, going on the road against Florida State. You're talking about a tier 2 team versus a tier 6. That should be an easy win even on the road. And you go out and lay a complete egg. 31-17 road loss. You lose 5 points, and you were already the higher rated team. So you end up losing a total of 9. You get 3 points out of this trip to Florida State. So major black eye for the SEC when you're comparing conferences. So you end up with a 3 on that one. You come back, you play Louisiana Monroe. Bad timing for the Warhawks to roll into town because it was coming off of that Florida State thing, and it's a 2 versus 8, but you take them completely to the woodshed. Play the perfect game, basically. Beat them 73-0, but you can still only win back 15 points, so it's a 21, which is a huge number, but not enough to outweigh what you did against Florida State. Luckily for Bama, they come back and play well against Wisconsin as well. 38-14 victory, a 2 versus 7 situation. So you earn back 7 points for that victory, and it puts you at 14 total in that ball game. So they come away with, much like Texas A&M, a 12.6 in the overall scope of things. Next on to tier 3 for the SEC, and this is the first time we see the Big Ten and the SEC go head to head. No, that's not. Yeah, this is the first time we see them go head to head, and it is a win for Oklahoma at home, 24-13. These are two teams, both 3 Tier 3 teams. So you're not dealing with having to make anything up. So you're basically just getting the 2 points for having an 11-point victory at home. So 14 points for Oklahoma, 12 for Michigan, advantage SEC. Then you play Temple, another blowout victory, 42-3, but it's a 3 versus 9 situation. So you earn 12 points for that one. It gets you to 18 after you give away 6. So another nice victory, and you come back and kill Kent State, win maximum points, 44-0. 3 versus 10, 22 points total in that ball game. So you end up with 18 is your average, a huge number for Oklahoma. So you had a hard time playing better in non-conference games than what Oklahoma did, and they come away with a huge number in that one. Next up, Texas Longhorns. Another Big Ten SEC matchup, and we talked about this one in the examples. It's a 7-point win for Ohio State, but you're at home. You're giving up 2 points because Texas is a level 3, you're a level 1. And so you end up losing a point overall, even though you win the ball game. So Texas comes away with 13, and Ohio State comes away with 11. And people are going to say, yeah, but Texas and Ohio State were considered to be even teams. Well, yeah, they were at that time. But here's the thing. When we're comparing conferences, we're going off the end of the season. I don't care where you were ranked when you played somebody. That's irrelevant. So, because if we're looking at the overall picture of the conferences, that little snapshot of time doesn't matter. I need the entire picture. Well, I can't have 6 level 1 teams in the SEC if we're going to compare conferences. So basically every 2 teams is another level, with the exception of the Big Ten, which has 18 teams. So level 4 and level 5 for the Big 10 have an extra team. They've got 3 teams. That's the only way I knew to balance it. Same thing with the ACC. They end up with 3 teams at level 4 because they've got 17. So that's how we ended up with that. So slight victory for the SEC in that situation because of the close loss on the road. If that's at a neutral site, not the case. It would be there'd be a push, and if it was at Texas, it would be a victory for Ohio State. They'd get credit for that because it'd be a road victory. But there has to be, where it's played is part of what's important, because most of these games for these power teams are played at home. And that's different than playing at a neutral site. It's different than playing it on the road. San Jose State comes into Texas. Texas, the only team in the SEC, actually had 4 non-conference games that counted in this because they did not play an FCS school. A lackluster outing against San Jose State. It's a 3 versus 12. You're giving up 9 points. You earn those back, basically, and end up breaking even against San Jose State in a 38-7 victory. Is this what you're supposed? That's exactly what we expect them to do. That's exactly where we expect that game to be. UTEP comes in, and you performed even worse. 27-10, 17-point victory over another 3 versus 12 situation. Giving up the 9, you only earned 5 points back this time. So you're in a bit of a hole, and you only earn 8 total. Now, luckily for Texas, Sam Houston rolls into town, who struggled against everybody. This is another 3 versus 12 situation. So that, when the Texas people start piping up about how great they were, keep in mind, you had 3 games, non-conference games, against the bottom of other conferences. The bottom 2 teams out of Conference USA, which is widely perceived to be the weakest of the conferences, and a bottom team in San Jose State out of the Mountain West. So just back off on the we should have been in a playoff talk. That doesn't bear out at all when you look at the entirety of the conference play and the non-conference play. Yeah, the Ohio State, when you look at the SEC, you played poorly against some of the bottom teams in the SEC, a couple of overtime wins, and a loss to Florida. Not good. So when you package that with 3 victories against teams from the bottom of other Group of 5 conferences, no, that's not a conversation we needed to be having. 55-0 over Sam Houston State. Happy for you. 15 points. You get 18. And it allows you to get past the break-even point, 12.8. Nothing impressive about what Texas did in non-conference play last year. Vanderbilt comes in. They're kind of the other end of the spectrum. They go out and get a huge victory on the road against Virginia Tech. It's a 4 versus 7. 44-20. You earn 13 points back. Way make up for the 3 you're giving away. 18 points total for Vanderbilt in that ball game. You come out and take Georgia State to the woodshed in a 4 versus 12. Earn all the points you can back, and you end up with 19 in that ball game. Utah State comes in, played a little bit better than expected, a 55-35 victory, and end up 1 point above break even at 13. But a 16.7 overall is a great number for Vanderbilt. Looking at the other Tier 4 team in the SEC, and that is Missouri. A nice win over the Big 12 in this one, 42-31. Once again, you're giving up a couple points. You're playing at home, so you're not getting a lot for that. You're getting 3 points back of the 2 you gave away. So 13-point victory against a good Kansas team. Not a bad outing at all for Mizzou at home. Then the Raging Cajuns come in, and you take them to the woodshed, 52-10, 42-point victory. You earn back 14 points, but it was a 4 versus 8. You end up with 22 overall. Then UMass comes in, who everybody beat up on. And yes, you beat them 42-6, but it's the 12-tier team out of the MAC. You end up earning back 11 points and ended up with 19 overall, but it is a very impressive 18 points in non-conference play. So that Tier 4 group performed extremely well for the SEC in non-conference play. We'll take a quick break on the radio side, come back, and talk about the bottom half of the SEC. This will wrap it up for the podcast. Catch us again on the next episode as we break down the bottom half of the SEC back in just a moment, or back with the next podcast in just a moment here on Stream City Radio, streamcity.org, Stream City Sports.